every year that I've coached, it seems like, especially in the last 15 years, that you start the season more reflective. You know, try to figure out why or how you got into it or what it's all about, what you're really all about. And I think a lot about, there's a couple of guys that really weren't that significant in my past, but were kind of interesting. One of them was a gentleman at Santa Ana Valley High School, and his name was Ivan McKinney. And Ivan once said, you don't want to stay in it too long. And I really didn't know what he meant at that time because, I mean, it didn't make sense to me. I thought, well, if you like it and you love it, you stay in it forever. Another guy named Bob Lester one time said, he said, Meiss, you're like a guy that's only drank a half a bottle of beer. You're not satisfied yet. He says, I drank the whole bottle and I don't want any more. And I thought that was kind of an interesting analogy himself. And so, because I'd asked him, he'd been coaching for years and he got out, and I asked him if he missed it. But I think everybody approaches it differently. Their philosophy and I don't think there's ever been a year that I didn't analyze at the end of the year, did I want to do another one? And at the beginning of the year, am I ready for this again? And it's kind of interesting because my first time as a head high school football coach, I had decided at the end of the year that I was not going to do it again. And but I was glad I did because, which is a story in itself. But in thinking about being a kid, just a little kid running around barefooted in little dirt poor town in the middle of central Illinois, and how does an individual become a coach, or why do you want to become a coach? And thinking about that, I think all the heroes that my dad would point out to my brother and I were athletic heroes. Mostly was his brothers. He had 7 brothers, and they were all pretty good athletes. So indirectly, he was telling us that's valued, that's important. And so when you went to school, you know, in those days, in the mid-50s, I guess, late 40s, nobody ever said, well, you know, this computer scientist is a real hero, or this doctor is a real hero. I mean, there were just people in town, and some of them had good businesses, and some of them were just good old working boys, but their only claim to fame was whatever they did in high school. It had nothing to do with what they did as an adult. And you know, you went into the dentist, the only thing you wanted to know was how many yards did he rush for when he was in high school. You didn't ask whether he was a good dentist. So I think it was important. And so the goal then was to try to become a good athlete and to be somebody. And then I think later that idea, you know, Sam Huff, who was I think a New York Giant linebacker of the old days, and he said that he always wanted to be somebody. He always felt like he wanted to accomplish something. He just didn't want to be another face in the crowd. And of course, the older you get, a little bit more cynical you get, you realize that none of us really ever become anybody, not in this life anyway. As far as put your finger in a bucket of water and pull it out, and the hole you leave is about the mark that you'll probably leave. Guys come, they're great coaches, they retire in 10 years. Kids don't know them. A lot of the coaches hold the memories, but you know, fame is a kind of a fleeting thing. But at least for me, while you're here, I see myself differently. I see myself different than my neighbor. My neighbor goes to work. He works 9 to 5. He comes home, and you know, he's probably a hero in his own household. I hope he is, but he isn't recognized. He doesn't seem to me to have a significant role to play in the society. And in schools, everybody can tell you who the football coach is, and half of them wouldn't know what the principal's name is, or the superintendent, but they all know who the football coach is. And I think somewhere in there, there's that desire to be recognized, or to do something. And then looking at it later, in my life anyway, I think that I've had an impact on people, and if you have an impact on people, you have an impact on the development, really, of the world and of the society. So when you pass away, you can say, what contribution did this man leave? You'd like to be able to think he affected the lives of many people, rather than, he punched the clock, collected his check, and paid his taxes. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I got into it, although at the time I probably didn't think in those terms. It just, as you get older, you get more reflective. I would say that I can remember when I first started coaching, I had a burning desire to be a head coach. I mean, I'd literally get up in the middle of the night and just be nervous and just walking around the house trying to figure out how I can become a head coach. And when I came to California in 1963, every other state other than California, you went to school for 4 years, you got your teaching credential, and you were qualified to be in high school. I never thought about coaching in junior high or anything less than high school, because that's where everything was at. That's where it was to be somebody. Well, when I got out here, I found out you need that 5th year in order to get a secondary credential. So I spent 3 years in the junior high, but it just whetted my appetite. I was an assistant coach at a place called Crescent Junior High over by Knott's Berry Farm. They bulldozed the place down; doesn't exist anymore. My first head coaching job was I was there for 3 years, and my first head job was at a place called Brookhurst Junior High School. And I went there, and I always wanted to do something innovative, and that's when I began to work on a thing called the Stars and Stripes offense. Actually, it was a derivation or a derivative of the run and shoot offense, which was really invented by a guy named Tiger Ellison from mid-Ohio. But a lot of people look at pros today and they say run and shoot offense, and they think Mouse Davis or somebody, and that really is the father of West Coast offense, which was run. You came out with the ball, attacked the line of scrimmage. You were either going to throw it or you were going to run it. The defense didn't know, even the quarterback didn't know, and so that was the pressure of the defenses. But it was based on motion, a man going in motion, and I said, well, if you put the guy out there in advance, I called it pre-motion, and I wrote a couple articles on it, and it was published in 2 national magazines. There were people on the East Coast that was using my offense, and I wasn't even a head coach yet. They were using my offense and winning with it, and had more experience at it than I really did. We started out doing that, and it was in 1960, I believe it was 67 or 68, right in there, that I wanted to leave Brookhurst Junior High School. And I was a kind of a pusher, I guess, and a lot of times if you're a young, aggressive coach and you're a pusher and you're trying to get ahead and everything, you are a threat to certain people. And for some unknown reason, there were a group of individuals that really did not want me to progress up to the high school at that particular time. A couple of older varsity assistants at Savannah, but the head coach, who was a man named Bill Hicks, he kind of believed in me a little bit, and the principal there, for some reason, he believed in me. And they gave me the opportunity to go over there, over the objections of a couple other people that I learned later didn't really know me, but didn't give me a very good recommendation. But that, I thought, was the biggest break I really got in my life, because that elevated me. I had done my year. I had picked up my credential, secondary credential. I went to Savannah High School, and I assisted Bill Hicks, and we refined the offense, and the newspaper tabbed it the red, white, and blue, or Stars and Stripes offense. And notably, of course, we had Steve DeBerg, who was actually just a big string bean kid that was a pole vaulter and a B exponent basketball player. And I was coaching basketball at the time, didn't have a kid that could dribble the ball the length of the court, and we had to break the press. And so I used Steve to throw the basketball from one end of the court to the other, and he did that so well. I said, you should try football. And so anyway, Steve kind of became associated with me and that type of offense. And then, of course, anybody that followed Steve knows that he was a successful high school quarterback, and then he went on to community college. He was successful there. Then he went on to San Jose State. He was successful there. He always was. This first year he was the apprentice, and the second year he was successful, and that followed him all the way through his pro career. And but anyway, Steve is retired now, and but he was with Denver and San Francisco and Tampa and Kansas City, I think, his last stop. But so he was kind of one of the fathers of or one of the beginning individuals that we had to work with. I don't know of anything else that would be of significant interest in my history, other than to say that I stayed there at Savannah for a number of years. And I think in 1973 or 74, I decided that I wanted to try administration. So I quit coaching for 1 year. I went back east. I took a job as a principal. I studied football back there, because you have to remember, I played 4 years in high school, and then I went to college. The first college football game I ever saw, I played in it. And when I was a freshman in high school, sitting on the bench, and somebody got hurt, and the coach said, "Meiss, get in there." So I ran out there, lined up, and all I remember is they said I made 4 tackles in a row. I don't even remember it, but it was just it. And I never sat on the bench after that point in time. It was kind of interesting. And then when I went to college, I played lettered as a freshman, and the goal then was that as a freshman they gave you a V-neck sweatshirt with a letter on it, Illinois State, and then as a sophomore they gave you a cardigan. But not very many of them V-neck sweaters were ever around, and and it was in the county seat in Bloomington, Illinois, where the university was, and they sponsored the county basketball tournament. So all the little high schools from all the territory would come in to play there. And you talk about being a puffed up hero, is when you had that V-neck sweater on, and they always hired the football players to usher at these at the McLean County Championship basketball tournament. So all my cousins and all my friends and all my relatives got to come down there to Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, and see us, walking around there with those, and that was quite an interesting thing. But I hadn't been in Illinois, during that time. So when I went back and then went in as an administrator, I watched football back there again, and began to realize that we weren't all that good as what we thought we were. That they say the longer you're out, the better you were, and I suppose that's good. But then I really wasn't all that satisfied. I was in administration. I went into a business for myself, and then I joined. I came back to California. I wanted to come back, and I had the opportunity to go to work for Dick Hill at Santa Ana Valley. And Dick was an interesting story, because his son was a senior at Savannah. We had lost a lot of our staff people, and this was in 1969. And Dick had come over and had said that he would assist us, because he had been a successful head coach, and he was in administration at that time. And he came over and assisted us at Savannah, filled in for the missing staff, and we had one of the greatest years, and we became friends. That's when I met him. So when I called him and said, I'd like to come back to California, and he said, I have an opening. And so I loaded up the dog and my oldest daughter and the old truck, and we came out, and we're coaching 3-a-days, driving around at 2 o'clock in the morning looking at real estate, trying to find a house to buy. And that was in 1975. And so I assisted him for 3 years. And we had some great teams, some great athletes, and I really learned a lot about how to coach, not the X's and O's, but the other aspect. I think the X's and O's were something that was kind of a gift and a study that I had, but how to handle losing, how to handle situations, what a philosophy is, simply the idea of giving your best of your God-given ability to be prepared. Always move forward. Don't make a big deal out of losing, and just keep plugging and keep trying and keep making an effort, realizing that this play right now, what you're involved in, is the most important thing. And obviously in football, but then it carries on into everything else that you do. And so that was a significant thing in my development as a coach. And then my first opportunity to become a head coach then was at the end of the time that I was teaching English assisting Coach Hill, Coach girls basketball, and a few other things. But and then they asked me if I would apply for the job at Santa Ana High School. And that was interesting because from that time on, some of the sports writers, Tom Hamilton and some of those guys, in private they always called me the Rain Man, because that was the first program where I went in where it was kind of like in a drought, things weren't going well, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction. And as I told you earlier, I went in there, and that first year we went 500. And I'll never forget the very first game as a head high school coach. We played Buena Park. We're coming back on the bus. It's a 0-0 tie, and I'm just in shock because I can't believe this is happening to me. And one of the kids said, "Coach, why are you so down?" And I said, "Because we didn't win." And he said, "Yeah, but Coach, we didn't lose." And that was interesting. Ricky Valdez made that statement because they had been losing. Well, we went on that year, and we wound up 500. I think we won 5 and lost 5 and tied 1 or something of that nature. And I, at the end of that, I was, because a couple of those losses were pretty funny. I think Coach Stroop, who assists with me now, would recall the one incident. We were playing El Medina, who was the powerhouse of our league at that time, and I think the score was about 42-0, and we were all huddled in the little shelter that they had there. It was nothing but an oversized garage on the edge of the field. It was homecoming, and they were firing off cherry bombs, and our guys were sitting around looking like they were in shell shock, and all those bombs going outside. It was just like you were in war. And I looked around the room, I don't know, made some silly comment or something, and it was pretty funny because in the scope of everything, I had, I think, the right handle on it, but it was almost hilarious at that point. But the thrashing was, I didn't know if I wanted to go through that again. And then, of course, the next year, we went, in '79, we went 10 games in a row, and we won the league, and I was honored to be selected as the Orange County Coach of the Year, and I was pretty young at that time. And it was the beginning of a couple of other situations where we turned the program around. And I say we because I think at that point, up to that point, and for years after that, I tried to do everything myself, and I surrounded myself with people that I thought had a understanding of what the philosophy we wanted, which now some guys call them Meissisms, but they are probably just taking different themes and different ideas, and so putting those together, and then going into some other programs, and of course making that program a successful program. And so that's kind of the beginning of it, I guess, really. I don't know if you if that's interesting to you or not, but did you have another question? Well, I think one of the couple of things that I think about when I guess I became, at least looking back on it, I think I became respected as a coach when the other coaches in the Century League at that time, when I was at Santa Ana, the league consisted of Villa Park and Canyon, El Medina, Santa Ana Valley, and Orange, and Santa Ana, and I think Tustin at that particular time. But it was a very tough league, and Foothill, all the different. Well, there's Coach Falk.
Got that?
I'm gonna start over.
Yeah.
The most significant thing I think at Santa Ana was the opportunity for me to gain respect as a guy that knew what he was doing as far as coaching was concerned. And when I took that job, I really was looking for people to assist me that understood one segment of the game. I guess what I was looking for at that time was I was looking for Indians and not Chiefs. I wanted guys that enjoyed working with me, that had the same basic philosophy, which I don't apologize for, which was I at that time just referred to it as a Christian philosophy, which was to treat people the way you wanted to be treated. I told the guys I didn't want them cursing and at the kids. I wanted them to be upbeat. I wanted them to have an interest in the kids' lives, to have some fun, and to work within what their position was, and not worry really about the strategy so much. And maybe partly because I felt like I knew what I wanted to do both offensively and defensively, but I needed people to prepare the kids. But anyway, in that period of time, against Bob Lester and Mullins and Ted Mullins, Bob Hughes, there were a number of good coaches throughout the league, and it was an extremely tough situation. We were very competitive after we turned the corner, so to speak. Had a great year in '79, won the championship outright, and there's so many things I could tell you about that. My dad coming out from Illinois, older years, or his later years, retired, and coming and watching practice, and then traveling on the bus with us, and some of the exciting things that happened at that time. Those are all tremendous memories and great kids. And then in 1983, other than '79, we were always successful. We were always winning. We always seemed to make the playoffs, and we always would do fairly well. I think, with the exception of 1 year. And but in '83 was a very exciting, explosive, unusual year. I had Dick had quit coaching at Valley, and I had persuaded him to come over to Santa Ana. So now I had one of the most respected coaches in the county as my assistant. And he and I philosophically were on the same page. It was a lot of fun. I had Coach Stroop, who's with me now. Dan had played for us in '79, and just became a kind of a football bum. Hung around, learned what there was to learn, and actually literally lived with us at the school. And I learned from that experience that a lot of your best coaches are guys that played for you when they were kids, and then they become young men, and they became very good assistants, and I've used them throughout in different occasions in my coaching. But anyway, in that '83 year, we wound up the end of the season. We were rated the #1 team in Orange County, and I believe we actually lost the first game of the playoffs against a real good Esperanza team, and some questionable things, which there always are when you get beat, I guess. But the thing was interesting that year was we lost a starter every week from almost the beginning until the end. And if you've got a team that has you're going to lose 8 or 9 good players, I mean, and then have to make an adjustment and go forward. And that was the epitome of what I always referred to as the offense that I designed and enjoyed using, was the fishing lure philosophy. The offense is a base, slot eye, straightforward attack, where a bad play at least would get you to the line of scrimmage. That was a part of a formula that I developed that said we're not going to run sideways, we're not going to create the long down, we're going to keep going straight ahead. Everything we do, it will be straight ahead, with assignment blocking, with good play action passes, with spreads if that's what's needed. We can come in with 2 tights, whatever's required. That's what we're going to use. So if I went into a game and the other team was loaded with big guys, I'd spread the field and try to even the odds in our favor. And then we would be in a tight formation. Then we would be in a spread formation. And pretty soon people, that was a compliment to us. They said, "You're a headache. We hate preparing for you because we have all these different sets." We were running the same plays, but they were out of all these different sets. And I remember we got down to the last game. We lost our tailback. We lost a couple of wide receivers. I think we had a quarterback or 2 that was dinged up. We were spread out all over the field. We had a real good little fullback, and we were just running quick traps when we got into a bind. And we were able to actually win the last game and wind up with in that position. But at the end of that year, that was very interesting because I felt that I would never again have that much talent, athletic talent on the field. And as far as the players are concerned, I thought this is as good as it's ever going to get. And I never wanted to be a guy that had, people say they have 15 years of experience, but in reality they have 1 year's experience 15 times, and there's a big difference. And I never wanted to be a guy that said, that you're just repeating the same things over again. It wasn't something new, something challenging. That's a part of my personality. And I didn't really want to go back and just do it over again. And I think, again, as I might have mentioned earlier, that's the hardest thing for me in coaching and in being involved, is that every year I have to make sure that it's not the same thing all over again. Because if it is, then it's very questionable as to whether it's worthwhile for me in my personality. But anyway, at the conclusion of that year, again, I was the second time I got picked for Orange County Coach of the Year, and I got a nice trophy from the Times and got to go do some speaking and all those things that really make you feel good. And I had an opportunity to join the New Orleans Breakers, and it was I didn't call the World Football League at that time, and I really wanted to make a change and advance, and it was very difficult. All these things depend on who you know, and I didn't have a lot of contacts in the college or the professional level, but this particular situation came as a result of one of my speaking engagements, and I was considering it. I probably would not have taken the job because my children were small and I couldn't really afford to move, so I probably wouldn't have taken the job. But the principal at the school at Santa Ana at that particular time, he wanted to know what my plans were for the following year, and I guess I was a little brash because I told him I thought that was more my business than it was his business, and that I really wasn't asking him what he was going to do the next year because I didn't really care. And it's not the way to talk to your principal, probably. So anyway, he said he would open up my job, and so it was quite a battle that happened in the newspaper, and there was controversy. Some of the district fathers did not like that we mentioned that we coached to honor the Lord, and was some comments made in our program that they felt was a conflict of church and state. There was a lot of things involved, but anyway, I got out of it, and I took that year off, just stepped back away from the game, and continued just to teach English and literature in the English department there. And then the next year, I went to Saddleback Community College, and a good friend down there, Bill Cunardy, and I had been coaching in the summer at quarterback receiver camps, and had become real good friends, exchanged a lot of ideas. And so Bill said that they had a need there, so Coach Swearingen allowed me to be the kind of the lead scout. They don't do a whole lot of scouting, but we would go down and take a look at some of the San Diego schools, and then come back and get involved with practice of what we could. But most of the work was like on Saturday, looking at the film, trying to give them suggestions of what I thought would be successful. And it was more of a learning experience for me, I think, than it was a contribution to them. And then I sat out another year, and then one day I was at Santa Ana, and I went out to the football field to watch, and Coach Hill asked me if I would help with the quarterbacks, and I said sure. So I started coaching the quarterbacks, and I never missed a practice. I just went back and started. Administration had a little hard time with that because they said, well, you can't have him on the staff because he was the head coach here, and he had resigned, and so on and so forth. And so Dick said, well, if I can't have Coach Meiss on my staff, then I won't coach either. And they didn't want that to happen. So finally, that was the doorway, so to speak, was opened up, and so I assisted him again for a couple of years, and we had a couple of really neat teams. And then the most unusual thing, Orange High School had won, I think, 9 games in 10 years, and they were without a head coach. They had no teaching position. I mean, there was not a place in the county that would have been considered, I think, any tougher to go into than that. And for some reason, I just had a feeling that, this would be a great opportunity to find out if all these things that I thought were true, the philosophy that I had, the approach that we used, the idea of selling somebody on that if they believe they can do something, that they can do it. If they understand that they have a chance to win. And I remember meeting with kids, and I would say, only a fool will say, we don't have a chance, and a bigger fool says, we're going to win. The guy that's right on says, if we get in there and we work as hard as we can, who knows what's going to happen? And so you're not underconfident, you're not overconfident, you're just going to go about doing the job. And then don't get hung up on some little problem. If you lose one game, shake it off and go on to the next one. It doesn't dictate to the whole season. So anyway, I called Coach Stroop. By that time had kind of become more or less my right-hand guy, and I said, well, what do you think about this? And we talked it over and thought it would be kind of fun. And I remember he came over to my house, and we were sitting there talking about what we were going to do. And the most god-awful feeling just engulfed me. Never will forget that, sitting in my living room. The only thing I can tell you that it's like that was like if somebody comes in and tells you a member of your family has died, and I wondered, what in the world am I doing? And just scared to death. And when you're 40-some years old, you shouldn't be getting scared like that. And I thought, what have I done here? But it just passed, and we went to work, and it was really interesting and a lot of fun because I'm teaching at Santa Ana. I jump in the car and right after school, and I buzz over to Orange, and the kids were all there waiting, and we would have meetings, and we would tell them, that this is what you have to do to win, and if you just don't get hung up, and there's no such thing as being snake bit or anything like that. Anyway, we launched on a series of successes, and we got tagged a little bit a couple times, and the kids bounced back from it. And the first thing you know, at the end of that 1989 season, we're playing before 10,000 people in the CIF final game. The whole town is going nuts because the old schools like Orange or Tustin or Huntington Beach, any school that bears the name of the community usually has a following because a lot of people in that community, Anaheim, Fullerton, they identify the school with the town. If somebody comes along and says, where are you at? And you tell them, oh, I'm at Canyon, or I'm at Lowera. What is that? Our Southern California has exploded, so you have all these names of schools that really don't identify with any particular anything, and it's hard to get a tradition. But these people, they sold that place out, and I tell you, that was one of the most exciting events. And then getting to be Orange County Coach of the Year again a decade later, that was very, very exciting. And but it was so exciting for the Orange Unified School District that they said, we would like to hire you to be the football coach. And I said, well, that's fine, but if you know anything about teacher salaries, you can't just move from one school to the other, unfortunately, because they won't give you all your years. And they said, well, we have an administrative position, and we'd like to offer that to you. And I said, I don't want it unless I'm the best qualified guy to do the job that you have. And so we went through the interview process, and they assured me that there wasn't anybody else that they had interviewed that they would have hired regardless of whether I coached or not. But their big concern was, would I stay and coach? They didn't want me to come take the administrative position, which was quite an increase in salary, and then bail out on them and sit in the administrative position, and they'd have to go look for a new coach. And I assured them that wouldn't happen. One problem with that was I didn't ask them what their assurances were, because 3 months after I was hired, they fired the old superintendent, hired a new superintendent, and just let it rest with the saying that that individual did not like sharing the spotlight, and he did not want an administrator being a head football coach. So he set about in a kind of a devious way. They eliminated my job from the budget, saying that they had budget cuts. And as a result of that, they put me, I had to pick a job back in the classroom. I wasn't very happy about that, and a reduction in pay and so on and so forth. So I sought different administrative positions. I went to Northern California, a lot of different places, and finished second on a lot of 10 and 15 man interviews, but God never opened that door for me, and I didn't land one of those positions. And I was teaching at Villa Park, which was a school in the Orange Unified District, and then this job opened up where I am now currently here at Foothill High School. And the same thing had happened. There was a little bit of a drought, and some of the folks were discouraged, and so once again we kind of dusted off the formula and came in and hired a good staff of people, and was fortunate enough to have some immediate success. We didn't win the league, but we advanced beyond anybody in the league, and we went to the semifinals of the playoffs, and had some great wins, some great excitement, and that kind of launched it for us. And we've been successful now. We haven't had a losing season since we've been here. We've won the league championship 3 times in a row, and hopefully we'll get a shot at it again this year. Actually, we won it back to back, skipped a year, then won it again. So we won it 3 out of 5, and we've been to the playoffs every year but one. But you know, the record, some say that I'm approaching 100 wins, and I really haven't kept very close tracks on that. If that happens, it's great. But a lot of people don't know, one of the things I'm looking back on my record that I'm more proud of than my wins is who I was beaten by. You know, people don't realize in order to win a little better than 66% of your games means each time you go out there, you're going to win 2 for every 1 you lose. And that's pretty hard, because you look at the life of a lot of good coaches, and to stay above 500 is a tough battle. And so if you can get up into the 60s or the 70 percentiles, it's tough. But for me, I'm proud of that, because I lost to Edison High School, I lost to Los Altos High School, I lost to Linwood High School, I lost to Esperanza High School, I've lost to Trabuco High Schools. All those teams that I just named were CIF champions the year they beat us. We never dodged or ducked anybody, and we've played some of the top teams, Capital Valley, Newport Harbor when they're at the top of their game. And I really don't think, maybe with the exception of 1 or 2 games, there were ever games that we lost that I felt that we definitely had better personnel and should have won. And so those losses, I think, are significant. And had I scheduled the Sisters of Marywood, maybe I had a little bit better record. But I don't regret that. And here now we sit beginning this next season, which, by the way, our theme is one more time. And people ask me, is there some significance in that, because they think maybe that's for me, one more time. But as I've tried to say all along, every year has been one more time, as I've never really thought beyond the season that I'm involved in. So whether it's one more time for me, I have no way of knowing. But it is interesting that we started in 1978 with that first group of kids at Santa Ana High School, and Donnie Green and Nick Uglasich and Tom Baldwin and myself and Jim Saldana and a bunch of guys, and we started. And I remember I said, I'm going to pick a theme every year. So that first year I got some old T-shirts, and we put the word "comeback" on the front of the T-shirts, and that word meant this was significant for us, because comeback means you always get up off the ground and come back for more. No matter what happens to you in your life, on the field, always come back. Always keep trying. Don't give up. Just keep plugging. Something will turn up for you. The other thing was, that was a significant play in our offense, where we would throw the ball down the line of scrimmage, and that's now called a quick screen in the pros, and everybody uses it. But at that time, not very many people used it. We called it a comeback right or comeback left. Throw the ball out there, and the other receivers, that if we'd be in trips, the other receivers go knock the guy on his butt because the ball's caught behind the line of scrimmage. And just kind of a little thing that other people might overlook. And then the idea of coming back from, you're in a bad program, come back to success, come back and be with us. If you're in another sport, come back. Always trying to get people to come back. And then they were lousy looking shirts, but anyway, that was the theme. The next year we had great looking shirts. They were red. We put a big ugly guy on the front and we said Buff, and that was our year. Big, ugly, fast, and furious. And those kids, if you talk to them, the group of 1979, that was the Buff year. They were Buff. I don't know if I can remember them all in significance, but I think the next year was Peak, and we put a mountain on the shirt, and then we had PEAK, which was prayer, enthusiasm, attitude, and knowledge. And that just reminded the kids of things that you had to have and know to be successful. So that year it was Peak. The next year we had a bunch of bees, and we had them swarming around on the shirt, and it was SWARM, swarm. We wanted a defense that would swarm the enemy to pursue and to get after it. So we used swarm. And then again, I don't remember for sure, but I think S was for spiritual. Take care of the spiritual side of your life. W was for work. A for attitude. Probably M for something with mental, and R for readiness. I don't remember now, what they all were without thinking about it. But each year we came along and we would have a different theme, and usually the letters stood for something. At Orange, the one year we had claw, and I don't remember the idea of clawing and trying and keep it coming back. I think the letters were commitment, love, and probably aggressive attitude again, and then work for the W. So always those words that we would work into it, and so I think that was the theme of '89. I'm not real sure. But then the next year we came back with play up a level, and we took all the kids to Chapman University and put college graduate platerboard hats on. Took our team picture with those, and we changed the name of our school that year to the University of Orange, which was really humorous because you could wear those T-shirts anywhere, and they said, people would ask, well, the University of Orange, I didn't know there was a university there, and we just laughed because we want to play and act like collegiates. And so those themes, those things have been kind of the basis for, the themes, the formula, and developing Meissisms, I guess. Again, the idea of certain concepts, certain ways of looking at things, how to handle wins and how to handle losses, which is more important. But that's a lot of words, and everybody has their own story, I suppose. Sometimes people will ask about, we have kind of a reputation of winning a lot of league games. I think we've won like 58 league games, and have only lost maybe a dozen or so. In other words, our league record, and that's really the money games. That's where it counts. Your league determines whether you're going to be seeded in CIF or whether you're going to the playoffs. And people ask about, how, what do I reflect on the success of the league games? And I don't know that you really ever know all of the answers. As Coach Stroop once said, football is not an exact science, therefore it can't be perfected. So we're always looking at causes and effects and trying to figure little things out, and it's a great game for doing that. But I would say this, that one of the principles or maximums in our formula was be prepared. So that meant that you have to prepare. You have to study the opponent. You have to know what they're going to do. You have to have a plan. You have to recognize your weaknesses. So many coaches just say, "Oh, we don't have it this year," and then they quit trying. So you've got to try to get your team better every week, regardless of what happens, as a part of that formula again. And then the idea of correcting your weaknesses and going forward. Well, we've always played a real tough non-league schedule. I mean, I played Capistrano Valley, which is a division, supposedly a division above us, and they got a lot more students and a successful program.
And that's just an example. And I haven't beaten them yet. Now, this year I hope I can, but I have not beaten them. We've played them tough, but I haven't beaten them. But our kids, when they play those tougher schools, and you come in with 2 or 3 losses, that one year we lost 4 games in a row. And people said, well, we're not going to do anything. And then we turn around and we won enough games in to qualify, and then went on into the semifinals and had an 8-4 record and so forth. But just the idea of playing those tough teams, it bloodies your nose a little bit on your record, and if you don't get injuries, and you shouldn't if you're playing it aggressive and heads up, you're going to feel that you're tougher than the opponent. And in fact, you probably are. And so then when you get into the league, you take care of business, and that's the way it should be. Some of the schools will have the philosophy, if they play 4 or 5 weaker teams, they get on a roll, they get some winning going, and maybe that'll catch their sails full of wind, and then they can carry it on. And that's all right too. I guess it depends on what you sell and what you believe in. But I think that by playing good opponents and giving ourselves a little bit a harder road to go, I think that's really helped prepare us. One thing that people always ask, I guess, what does it really take to win? And I've been thinking about that this year a lot, looking at this team that we have. And one of the things that I notice, and sometimes I think, well, maybe I've stayed too long. Every program that I've gone into, the kids were willing. They were sick of losing. They wanted success. They wanted what I wanted, and they when you showed them that it could be done, they believed. Now, there are times when you need to have success immediately in order to, at least in my opinion, in order to validate what you're trying to teach them. Give you a case, and when we first went to Orange, we told them, we give them the formula. We were running straight ahead. We had everything in place. We said, this play is the most important play. Maturity is when you don't go out the window when something bad happens. That's the definition of maturity. So if you win, don't go nuts. Act like you've been there before. If you lose, don't go in the tank, because if some guy would have dropped the ball and you would have won, you thought you're God's gift to football. But because he didn't drop the ball and you lost, you think you're the Pits. And it all depended on one oblong ball, what it did maybe on one particular play. So in the overall picture of things, it doesn't make that much difference. You could get clobbered and yet go back and look at the film, and maybe 4 plays you let down, but they scored on those 4 plays, and the rest of the game you played them even. But you think they're a great team and you're bad. There's not that much difference between winning and losing. But that little difference, as Lincoln said, not much difference between all men, but that little difference is all the difference in the world. And that's what it is in this football, is that you've got to continuously believe that you can overcome and that you can get better, and then you don't overreact to these things. And you get this even keel that'll carry you through. And preparedness, not emotionalism. I don't bite heads off of chickens and tear up lockers and stuff. I just try to get us to get focused on the fact that some good things are going to happen, some bad things are going to happen. Don't get dwelling on anything that's negative. And then if things are going good for you, try to build momentum, and we use the term push the other team off the edge of the table. Because in every game, one team decides they're not going to win. And if they decide that in the first quarter, it's going to be a long night. And if it's your team, and you can keep them to believing, if they're down 30-0, and you can go, hey, they scored 30 points in the first half, we can score 30 points. So don't give up. Keep trying, keep plugging. And so, that plugging that in is that kind of thinking. But anyway, back to my story. When we were at Orange, there's myself and Coach Stroop and Coach Haley and a couple other young guys and Coach Bland and Coach Howard, and we're all excited, and we think we got new pink sweaters, and we got all this stuff going for us, and we got the team. We're going to go up to play Chino. Well, if you know anything about Southern California, we're in Orange County, and you got to go out to Chino on a Friday night. You need an airplane to get over the freeway. So I had made arrangements for the bus to be there early before the traffic. I had made arrangements for the team meal to be at a fine restaurant. We were going to go in there. We were going to go first class. nice warm-up, familiar ourselves with their facility, and then play a whale of a football game. And I have invested and have had fears in dealing with all this, and the team is ready to go, and we're sitting out there on the grass, and it's 2:30, and now it's 3 o'clock, and now it's 3:30, and there's no bus. And I'm running in and out, and I'm calling on the phone, and I'm getting steamed and steamed and steamed, and I know what's going to happen. And finally, the bus shows up like at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I said, look, we're going to be playing a football game here in 2.5 hours. How do you think we're going to get through that traffic? I told the bus driver a shortcut that I knew. He wouldn't take it. He said, I'm going to go the way I'm going to go. But we're sitting out in the middle of the freeway. And I mean sitting. We're parked in the world's biggest traffic jam, and I'm looking at my watch, and I'm saying there's no reason. We're already past the time for this meal. I've reserved this restaurant for expecting 90 people to show up. All of these things, and I'm thinking, this guy does not know that I've invested a year of my life into this one thing, and the philosophy that a lot of people have, which may be true, is you never get a second chance to make a first good impression. So I'm thinking to myself, we're going to go up there, and everything I've told these kids, I mean, it's going to blow up, and then I will have lost my credibility. We go up there, we hit town, tell the bus driver, pull in the shopping mall over here. It looks like there's a half a dozen fast food places. Guys, you're on your own. You got 15 minutes to get food. I walk over with my hat in my hand and apologize and eat crow for this restaurant that has all this food prepared, and told them that we couldn't make it, sorry, etc., etc. Get back on the bus. The kids start coming back. Some of them got McDonald's, some of them got tacos. I'm hoping to God they don't have something that's going to be really bad for them. We get on the bus. We go over to the stadium. The other team is already done warming up. We're not even dressed. So we go out. We do a little bit of a quick warm-up. I don't remember. Maybe we only went out one time. I really don't remember how, but what are you going to do? So we start the game. We put the formula in gear. We march down the field. We line up in two tight ends. We kind of frustrate their defensive calls, and we just go bam, 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 play action down the field, and we got them 6-7 to nothing. We kick the field goal, or the PAT, at 7 to nothing. They come back, and I make about an 80-yard run, and then they kind of fumble and fluke around a bit. They let us get the ball back again. We make another drive. Now we got them 14 to nothing. They don't think that they got time to run the ball anymore, and they start passing, which wasn't what they do. Anyway, make a long story short, we beat them 30 to nothing. And you don't think that wasn't as significant. That was the one where I said after the game, he said, how do you feel about that? I said, I'm as happy as a gopher in soft dirt. And so they put that in a headline, and a board member had that framed and sent to me. But it's an interesting thing how things worked out for us, and the kids believed, and we were as giddy as schoolgirls coming back on that bus. I'll never forget that. But anyway, it just, again, people asking me, what is the success? What is the key to winning? And I was thinking that wherever I've gone in, those kids, they wanted it. And the other thing was the kids were together. They did things together. They believed in each other. They hung out with each other. They talked about what they wanted. They talked about their aspirations. They talked about being successful. And that moved in a circle that was after what we wanted. And man, was that fun to work with them. But you go into a school, and then you turn the thing around, and then you establish a winning pattern, and then those champions, those guys that you started out with, just the ordinary Willies and Joes that you had that special bond with, they're gone. And now here comes another group along, and they've been seeing Foothill High School win for 4 or 5 years. And they don't remember how it was. And some of them, sometimes they think they're just going to roll their hat out onto the field, and everybody's going to get out of the way. Or they don't have that real desire because they don't know what it is to be losing. They don't know what it is to have that stigma of being second best. And so, well, just go play for the fun and see what happens. You can do that, and you can be mediocre, or you can be 500. But if you want to be a champion, you've got to be together. You've got to have that desire to go forward. And quite frankly, school's out on this group of kids that I have right now, because I don't know whether they're going to get that vision or not. And it concerns me a little bit, because one thing that I noticed when the guy said about drinking the half a bottle of beer, and the other guy said don't wait too long, when you get to be somewhere between 50 and 60, your energy levels drop a little bit. And sometimes you don't say the things that you need to say. You think that they already know these things, and they don't know them. And so I've got to line those kids up, sit them down and tell them, you know, shut up and listen. I'm going to tell you some things, and I've got to get them focused, and I've got to get their hat screwed on right, and I've got to get their thinking right. And I have to be responsible for a certain amount of the motivation that they have. And how much success we have in 1997 is going to depend on how much of what I have to say are they going to take to heart. Everybody wants to win, but not everybody wants to work to win. And if they want to lift the weights, and if they want to perfect, and if they have that desire in their heart, and how much can I and my coaches implant, and how much can we overcome? It's always interesting. That's a fantastic challenge. And you know, the only thing I know that'll overcome hard work and a great attitude is speed. Any of you that have read the book The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, remember that the grandma, who is kind of the matriarchal figure in the family, near the end of the book, and then of course in the movie, if you'll remember it, with Henry Fonda and the crew that put that on, the old grandma says that life is not a continuous flow. She said it's kind of little jerks. A baby's born, and that's a jerk. You change a job, and that's a jerk. Somebody dies, and that's a little jerk. So it kind of goes in that fashion. And I always thought that was kind of interesting, because in football, it's kind of that way too. I always thought that you know, we developed a formula, and the philosophies that are in our formula are still there, but our formula for attacking defenses has changed a little bit. And I think that where we used to say that I think it was of the top 20 teams in the United States every year in college, of the top 20 teams, 15 of those teams choose the rush over the pass. Of the top 20 passing teams, 5 are winners and 15 are losers. So it's not a knock on the passing game. It's just that if you've got the mooses and the horses and you can run the ball, it seems like the odds are on your side. A lot of teams that don't have the mooses or the horses, they realize they're not going to run over people, so they need to throw the ball in order to give themselves a chance to win. And out of the 20 teams that don't have the horses, 5 of them make that work. Now the other 15 have great stats, but they don't necessarily win. And I would say that's been the last, maybe the last 10 years, or I would say that's been 10 years ago, but during the last 5 years, that's kind of changing a little bit now. And part of our formula, which was to just, you know, run the ball straight ahead, try not to make mistakes. A good play will get you back to the line of scrimmage. A mediocre play will get you 60 yards, and a great play maybe you can break for a touchdown. And we've changed a little bit on that, and I think that all the programs now, or the good programs, have advanced themselves, and it's getting more difficult. You don't find unprepared people. You have to be sophisticated. You go to a clinic and people talk about use the KISS system, which means keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid does not work. You cannot be simple. Unless you're the biggest guy on the block and you've got 4,000 students and everybody else in your league has 1,500, or you're an all-male Catholic school where you're getting the cream of the crop and they're always going to be prepared. If you're dealing off of the same deck, the people are, you're not going to have that overwhelming advantage. You cannot keep it simple. It's complex and it's complicated, and you must always be changing, and you have to be on the bubble. You have to be on the cutting edge. If you don't know what the new trends are and you're unable to do them yourself, you're probably not able to defend them. And I've always said that a good offensive coach has to start out first understanding defenses, and then a good defensive coach had better know how to advance the ball, because he's not going to realize what his weaknesses are unless he can do that. And so the formula that we've had has changed in that sense a little bit. So I guess we probably add to the formula now is you must always change, you must always grow, and you must always evolve with the game, because one thing is certain, and that's change. Because nothing ever stays the same. And what's good for a little jerk or for a little decade or so may not be good forever. So you have to be prepared to make a change in how you approach it.
Tom, can you tell us about some of the fun things in coaching, some of the funny things you've either done as a head coach for motivation or things like that have gone through? A lot of people, we see it as all work and not so much fun, just not the victories, but practice things or pregame things that you thought that were, memories.
I think that's part, again, maybe of the formula that we've developed, is that we've always said that it needs to be fun. You can't take yourself too seriously, and it's not healthy. And so we try to break things up a little bit. I know we have Crazy Hat Night, we have the Mother's Tea Night. We have had some incidents, maybe some time we'll take time and take a segment, like the time that we were going to play a particular school who had a duck as a pet mascot, and we were supposed to play them on a Saturday, which wasn't a traditional thing to do. And I went to the school, and it was raining, and I was concerned that the kids are going to be worried that we couldn't win in the mud and the rain, and so everybody was tense because the league was on the line. And so I put on a pair of waders and took an old shotgun, and I went down to the school, and they were all waiting for me to open up the gym. And when I got out of my car, they all kind of looked and took a double take, because you're not supposed to have any guns at campuses. And I stepped out, and I had my waders and my duck hunting outfit on and my little duck call, and I gave that a couple of quacks, and I said, "Guys, it looks like a great night for a duck hunt." And I let go with a couple of rounds up into the trees, and as the twigs all fell down and their mouths opened up, it kind of broke the ice a little bit, and we went on and won that game. And that was the most significant one. Or the time that we lost, and I was afraid that the kids, and I know it's overused now, but at that time it wasn't all that trite, and they were kind of down. And I said, "Guys, it isn't that 6 million Chinese don't care that you lost. They don't even know that you played. So in the scope of things, don't get too worried about this loss." And I think that they appreciated that fact, that that we didn't make too big of a deal out of it. But yeah, you can sit around and start talking about humorous moments, and there's certainly a lot of those, and a lot of fun times that we've had with kids, and good times and bad times. Kids that have gone on to be successful, it's great. Some kids that have gone on to lose their lives because of something related with alcohol or drugs, or some that get afoul of the law, and that it's really interesting that you don't win them all, and but that's you certainly are a part of what's going on, and you're not just 9 to 5 when you're coaching a football team, especially high school kids.
Is there a difference in the kids when you started coaching to the kids nowadays?
No, I don't think so. That's interesting, because everybody always thinks that the kids are changing a little bit. I think from maybe 30 years ago, when there wasn't so many options, you were satisfied maybe to be a part of something bigger than yourself. Even if you sat on the bench and didn't play, you were still a part of the team, and you still felt an identity, and you still felt a part of your school. And now kids will sit back, particularly between their freshman and sophomore year, and they look at the guys that are in front of them, and they say, "Well, I'm probably going to work very hard and play very little, so it might be to my best interest to go do something else." And God knows there's plenty else to do, because it's unlimited to what the options that are out there, the money, the freedom, the things that can entertain you. And maybe in the old days, if you weren't on the football team, you had to go home and work, so you might want to stay on the team just to stay out of it. But the attitudes, again, I think it's more dependent on how that group of kids response at that given point in time. So maybe there's not a general statement that you can make that I've had some groups that I didn't think maximized 4 or 5 years ago, and some since then that I thought have done a good job, and who knows what they will want into the future. Parental involvement has probably changed a great deal. Parents, a lot of times a kid can be benefiting and can be having a ball, and he's just a part of the team, and the parents put particular thoughts into his mind. He's not getting enough playing time. They can make a kid miserable. They can ruin the whole experience by not using their heads. The public in general is bad because everybody jumps on the bandwagon. You have to be number one. If you're number 3 or number 4, they're not going to come to games anymore. They only come if they think it's if it's you're battling, and if you lose a couple games and your crowd dwindles. I one time a couple years ago I said, that doesn't happen in Lubbock, and they didn't understand what I was talking about, and I had to go back and explain to them. In some of these places, this is the town, this is the high school, this is your community. Loyal and commitment means you stick with them thick or thin. You pack the stands no matter what the record is, and you try to help them. Out here, it's kind of a look and see. And it's the way we treat our professional teams. If the Angels are winning, they fill the stands. If they're not, there's no loyalty. They don't go. And maybe that's natural, but I don't think that it's always the healthiest thing for kids. They need to be supported 100%. The horror stories that come out of Little League and some of those things, we don't get involved with that too much. One thing that's unique about football is a lot of times a mother will go up to a Little League coach and chew the coach out and say, well, my son's got just a good chance to go up and bat and strike out as Johnny does. And mother comes up to me and says, I think my kid should play more. And I'll say, well, listen, I'll put him in there this week right there at nose guard, and we'll see if we can run over him a few times, and if we can't, he'll be the guy that's going to play. And then they'll say, well, not so fast, Coach, that's not exactly what we had in mind. As you see, everybody wants you to take their mediocre child and surround him with great talent. And so it's pretty interesting. But here at Foothill, the boosters have done a good job. I came in and I told them, you're not here to boost me or the staff. We coach with what we have. Everything you do should be aimed at making it better for the kids, make them feel special to be out here, and we, and then help your kid, pump him up and build him up and encourage him, and don't criticize the coaches, and try to coach those people into what a good booster club is all about. And they raise some funds, and we try to spend it in the best way that'll help their kids have a good experience here, and that's the parent involvement here is good. Unfortunately, in some of the schools, social economic reasons or whatever, I know that's a tough nut to handle. They just don't get behind them, and the haves usually continue and to grow, and the have-nots will go the other way, and it's a contrast.
Is there anything in the future for you in the idea? Would you want to move on either to the upper levels of college, or even take another high school job, or pretty much you at your last stay, or is that something you never know, or would you? It sounds like you've done a lot of work on every program you have to take over, or you started over. Would you ever take on that endeavor again to take a losing program and to try to get them out of the drought?
I've thought about it, that maybe, and this year I thought a couple of times when I mentioned maybe in the earlier session that I thought that maybe I stayed too long, or maybe fun to go somewhere where they're really hungry. And so I thought it would be kind of nice if I could find some place where they haven't had some success and go in and to do it all over again and to show them the way. But I'm not sure that at this point I would have the energy to really pull that off. Somebody asked me if, I've always had a dog in my family most of my life, and now that I'm getting older, someone said, well, don't you want a dog? And I said, well, no, I certainly am not going to buy anything that's going to outlive me. And So, but I had enough dogs to notice that after they got to be about 14 or 15 years old, they started taking longer naps, and they start doing things that were, and so sometimes my energy level is not quite, I know up here what needs to be done, and the thing that I've been able to do is to adapt and change, and maybe for the better in some ways, to delegate and to give other people an area of responsibility and live with the outcome. And if they're enjoying it, then and if they're successful, if they feel good about what they're doing, and I feel like I've provided a way for them to enjoy that. Coaching football is an art form because it's just you take this empty canvas and you see what's going to happen. The only thing that's tough is that if the artist makes a mistake, he just gets paint and paints over it. When you make a mistake, and it's the record, it's permanent. You can't go back and erase it. But every year you create something, and if they enjoy that and they like working with the kids and they want to be a part of that, and I can help them experience that, that would be that would probably continue for me to go. But if I had to do it, if I had to go it alone, I don't think that. I think that's what some of what Mr. McKinney might have meant when he said you don't want to stay in it too long. So that delegating and finding people that are really wanting to work and have a servant's heart, that's kind of where I am on it. But as far as going up to the next level, I don't know. I might like that if I would have that freedom now, because my family has always been a great family. They've supported me and come to the games, and they've enjoyed being a family, I think, of a football coach. My wife is jealous of the time sometimes, but I think she also recognizes that it's been an interesting 40 years for her and I, and so it's been something that I've thought about. If I went to a college again, I think I could make a contribution, college or pro, wherever, because I think that the game, certain things, if you have a gift for certain things, it's not going to change on any level, and I think I could contribute, and maybe even better at a professional position, because quite frankly, when you teach school all day, and I'm in this situation here where I've got all of these kids that have immediate problems, and you're dealing with problems all day long, and they're not motivated kids. A lot of them are just your regular physical education kids, and they drain you. So you're hitting those classes, and you're making a performance 5 periods a day, 5 days a week, and then you have to come out and be fresh after school and present something. And it's not just your football coaching; it's those other things that drain you a little bit. And you wake up in the morning and you're excited, and then you kind of wear down as the day goes, and you get to that group that should have your best, and sometimes your best has already been shot. And that's the nice thing about some of the walk-ons, because they are not institutionalized in that. Some of them are doing other jobs. They're sitting at a desk, or they're doing something. They're ready to get out there and be with some people, and they come in and they're fresh and they're ready to go. And I think that can be a real plus. But who knows what'll happen? You never know. A person might get out of it and then miss it and get back into it. I certainly think as long as my health holds up, I'm going to be doing something. I'm not going to go just sit around and vegetate, that's for sure.
Lastly, if you could give just a few pointers out to any young coach that was coming up the ranks and that was going to be a head coach someday, or what would you now, obviously you're doing some things differently than when you first started in your first year, but what would you tell him to get him ahead of the game so he didn't have to learn the hard knocks maybe that you went through?
That's a real good question, and it's interesting. That's one of the things you ask about the players have changed. When I first started, one of the questions they always ask young coaches was, they always ask a lot of loyalty questions. And they made a big deal out of loyalty. I never understood why they made such a big deal out of loyalty. Well, the reason they made a big deal out of loyalty, there wasn't an assistant coach alive that did not want to be a head coach. And that was, Jan Cassius has a mean and hungry look, because some of those guys had knives in their hands, and when things wouldn't go right, they'd go up to the principal and say, well, if I was in charge, we wouldn't have lost Friday night. So they always wanted to know about loyalty, because everybody wanted to be a head coach.
And it's because everybody wanted it, man, you wanted it. And so that's changed now. Not everybody wants to be a head coach, and I don't know what the reasons on that, and maybe it's good. But man, why do some people get into the coaching, especially at the high school level? I mean, it pays nothing. It pays peanuts. I mean, I can make that much money in one day doing something else, and so you're certainly not doing it for the money. Why do they coach? Man, if they love being with the kids and they want to show the kids how to do something and they're excited about the game and they go to the clinics and they're learning and they want to grow, those are the kinds of people that you want to be around. And I just my only advice to somebody was, if you don't have the passion, don't do it. I mean, I'm amazed at some people that get into it and they're blasé. I mean, they don't do anything. They just want to show up on Friday night and stand in front of the crowd, but when it really comes to, do they have a zeal or a passion, it's not there. And there's an interesting thing, a good question you can ask a lot of people is this: if you could wake up tomorrow with one characteristic that you don't have right now, what would it be? And a lot of people would say, well, I'd like to wake up tomorrow with the ability to make a lot of money. Or other people a lot of times would say, well, I'd like to wake up tomorrow and be able to, do a specific thing. But I believe that there are rich people that are unhappy. There are people that have gotten all the things that they wanted and they feel a tremendous void in their life. I think that one of the characteristics that's a really desirable thing to have, always have a passion. You have a passion and excitement. Making the money is probably more fun than having the money, or doing something and being excited about it, looking forward to it. That's what it's all about. Just like somebody probably wants some information right now.
Interesting things that you run into when you're a football coach is that people that don't have any respect for your situation, they bring their dogs out on the field, they exercise and they golf on your field, and if you got any pride in what you're doing, you really get disgusted. Now here I am today, we're having an inter-squad game, and the field man, he knew we were having a game, but he didn't put two and two together, so somebody has to come out, mark the field, put up the safety things on the goalposts, put the cones in the corners, put the yard markers down, and then they tell me this morning they run out of paint, so the field is really not marked adequately. And when you run into all these situations after a while, it's really makes you wonder what these other people are getting paid to do. But one thing about it, I got my trusty little golf cart, so some of these things I'm able to get done a little bit better. But I'll tell you one thing, a lot of guys think being a head coach is a glamorous situation. What they don't realize is there's a lot of custodial work that goes with this as well. 35 years of picking up after kids, marking the fields, doing all this stuff, it's kind of humbling. So, I don't think Lou Holtz has to do this, but I found out a long time ago that doing it yourself is about the only way to get it done. Otherwise, you're just farting against thunder. Well, I didn't mean to say that. One thing about it, you gotta be willing to do some pretty menial chores here. Now, if I was Einstein, I guess I'd have this figured out too. I tell you what, you're gonna have to turn that camera off and become a worker. At this time, we have our famous chicken and bean game, which is the conclusion of spring football. The winners eat the chicken and the losers eat the beans. And my job is to be the referee. I don't try to be fair. I don't try to be a good referee. What I try to do is make a few bad calls and make them learn how to handle it, because if they react unfavorably, then they get 15 yards on top of the bad call, so it really hurts their team. And I try to make the game come out to be a tie, but sometimes I can't do it. If the other team's clearly better, why that's gonna. But we give a few penalties, try to keep it fairly even. My biggest concern, of course, different from college. In spring football, the linemen especially, they got to stick their face in there and they block pretty aggressively. They have no real protective equipment. So if I can get out of this game with no injuries and nobody getting too mad at each other, it's usually considered a success. So let's hope it works out that way today. Get some of these good parents onto my chain crew here now.
Be there all the time, despite it just being Flag Day tomorrow.
Tomorrow is Flag Day, they tell me, but I've had it on there ever since I found it laying out here after Independence Day, or Memorial Day.
Well,
so
mine's been up since Memorial Day, and I'm not taking it down.
I'm gonna leave it on there till it's just shredded. Hey, Matt pulled my chain a little bit on yesterday. Was it necessary for him to leave at 2 o'clock to be in Tent City, or
He had a 4 o'clock.
a 4 o'clock? Okay.
Yes, and which he has to be there about 20 minutes till.
Okay. Well, then
Takes him 30 minutes to get there, so
he's conning me. Then.
he's kind of.
He always I know when he's conning me because he sends another kid to tell me.
Yeah.
So I told him today. I said, Matt, no messengers. You come tell me yourself.
Absolutely.
So,
he conned you for about an hour there.
Yeah, he conned me out of an hour.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll give him what we call the opportunity today.
Fine. That's the only way. Yeah. He gets them at home too.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well.
All right.
Who are you guys rooting for? The black team or
Yeah, black.
the black team?
He's voting for white team. The losers.
Well, this is a first for us. We've really never had a chicken and bean queen, but it had such a nice ring to it that I thought this year we'd have a chicken and bean queen. Well, a lot of the young ladies at school were kind of confused about that, and it was a new deal, so they really didn't. I didn't get much of a response. But Miss Lemos here was kind enough to realize that they probably weren't going to get the picture, and having these two lovely members to be a part of the court here, that these are the escorts, and Christine is going to be our honorary queen today, which basically means that she gets to flip the coin and the fellas know that she's here supporting the program, and that she's going to introduce the attendants.
Oh, well, this is Indy. She's my puppy. She's named after the Indy 500. And Mrs. Holmes is bringing the other attendant, Tom. It really is Tom.
What can I say? Now, these dogs are how old?
These dogs are 7 weeks old today.
Okay. Oh. Tom is look, I think Tom is more interested in the wheels on my golf cart.
Tom is ready to go.
He's practicing up for the
Indy's not a football dog. She's an auto racing dog, but she'll learn to like football too.
Look how much calmer this female is. Marie, would you come over here, please? As president of the Booster Club, I think you should meet our. We have a.
Mascot?
Well, actually, Christina has agreed to be the queen of the chicken and bean game, which means that she gets to flip the coin, and she's.
I assume Christina's not the puppy.
No,
Hi,
no.
Christine.
This is Marie and Tom Burns.
And I'm really not in tears.
Oh.
Are you allergic to dogs?
No, in my house?
Yeah, we only got 3 running around.
No,
We
it's
raised
something,
English
I was
Springer
cutting
Spaniels.
onions for the party tonight, and I've got it on my hands, I can't get rid of it.
We've had herds running around the back.
So you're gonna flip the coin?
I'm gonna flip the coin.
Now, we have no prejudice on one side or the other, we're neutral?
No.
I've got students in both uniforms today, so I'm.
I think maybe
All
we should
right.
let Tom be for one team,
Yeah.
and we'll let Indy here be for the other.
Indy's blonder, so I think she should be for the white team. Tom's a little bit darker, so I think he's gonna root for the black today.
All right.
Well, we're going to have the coin toss here in about 3 or 4 minutes, so I'll have you guys come up there about the 50-yard line. I'll bring out their captains,
Okay.
and then we'll have the coin toss.
Go retrievers.
Golden retrievers, I know. Golden retrievers.
All right, well, we got to go the other end and mark some more here. I all know the rules. The only rule that we didn't cover real thoroughly, which you want to go back on your teams, is that the defensive ends can come in on the punts in case the ball goes over the head, but they can't intimidate the kicker. But they need to come in from that. So make sure that if the ball is muffed, okay? All right. Captain Blanchard, this is Captain Newman, Captain Newton, Captain Blanchard, Captain Newman, Captain Haynes, Captain Newman. Okay, you guys keep your people under control here. Because you're wearing the dark jerseys, designate that you are the home team. And I'm going to have the chicken and bean queen, Miss Lemos, going to flip the coin here, and we will let the visitors call it in the air.
I don't know how to flip a coin, so I'll try again. I'll try my best.
Heads, he calls heads, and it is tails, which means you have the choice. Would you like to start with the ball? Start with the ball. Start with the ball. Okay, you'll be starting on that 30-yard line. You'll be coming this way. You will be on defense, and you will be defending that goal. So, actually, you blundered into a rather good situation because if you will notice, you have a very stiff wind right there, okay? He tricked you. Okay, thank you. All right. All right. Let's do it, baby! Alright, well, let's see, which side should I put the black team on? They got the most bodies, so I think I'll put them on this side over here. Where's your quarterback?
Huh? That's what he would like to know.
Okay, now Dick, what he's going to do now is that you and Danny...
Hey, Coach, don't try.
You hear the whistle, you try to figure out
Coach,
what
try to key him over.
This
little guy?
One very quick question we had, Coach Meiss. If you're calling the D's, right? Well, what if a situation where you think, I'm just curious, we have any input on telling you, like, hey, we like a 2 deep because you keep running 1 free against with ball, those type of things.
In that case, if you send a substitute in with the defense,
That
tell me, I'll tell him to go call it.
Okay, good. You got to have some input.
Yeah.
Get outside!
Hey, you gotta be able to tackle him. Come on. Hey, it's not where you tag him, it's where you can tackle him.
Let's take Newman out. Only Newman. Let's go, Newman.
Should be a penalty. There's a guy out of uniform out there. Oh my God. Sweet, sweet. Run it. You got no end.
They got no end out here. Left side. Larry's inside. He's inside the tight end of the tackle. They got nobody outside.
Where's that clipboard for it? Where's your clipboard? Oh, not today. 40 mug games. Ready!
Dirt and slime.
Now get to it.
Third and about. Nobody on the slot. Yeah. Well, now I'm out.
Yeah. Let's go, punt. Punt it. Take out that guy, Newman.
You got to make those.
Come on, D.
Swing out. Yeah.
Hold your hands up. 3. Come on, D. Let's go. Defend. Here we go, D. Here we go. Hey, Rayburn. Don't give up. Play to the whistle, defense. That way he can't throw the ball. I didn't have him. Whoever was there. You had him. Hey, who was touching Robbie? They had 3 hands on him. Well, you got to be a little better than that, because they're not going to call it. Make sure he doesn't throw the ball. Come on, let's go. Touchdown! Hey, 82! Now stand there.
Ryan have to get out.
Hey, we were there. There was fucking
Chris has to know
one
what he's
person.
doing, dude.
You gotta stay on top. Okay, you gotta stay on top of that deepest receiver and play the deep center field. If you got that responsibility in cover one, you're deep middle. Do not let any receiver get behind you, or you're dead. You're burned.
Let's go D.
Hey, Coach, set up the tight end on the right when you on passes and stuff like that. Because if I have to call a razor call, and that's the only way I can help out with or somebody.
You want to stay away from Jordan. That's Jordan's side.
Yeah, I know, but you can't if you call it on.
Run!
Nobody is helping.
God, you
nobody is helping Liddy with Jordan.
Come on, let's go D. Let's go.
You got to set him up on the right so I can help out.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Get some pass protection on that. Get some pass protection for Robbie. I'm sure we can.
I know.
So you start waggling them.
Yeah.
So what? First play we're gonna go pro right, blue right, waggle, white right, waggle.
Yeah, we can. I mean, let's go white. Well, yeah.
Well, we should go to the left to stay away from Jordan.
Well, I mean, but waggle has nothing to center because they're going outside. So that doesn't matter. Jordan and if you're going outside, the middle top doesn't matter. The only thing is the cat because he doesn't lose contain. We have to go white left. To the fourth.
Lean forward, keep yourself back, but forward.
Don't miss the ball!
When you start, you drop your head forward.
Middle!
Before that, all right. Here you go.
Go! Go! Doing pretty good so far.
Oh, Dana's one like.
Sweet thing, like
I didn't know he was doing that.
Get Liddy!
There you go. Get the ball. Here we go.
Go, Lloyd!
Good job, defense. Good job. Good job, Rayburn. Way to go.
Jordan.
Rayburn.
Get out of the cameraman's way.
What the air out of your tires.
You wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Okay.
Ball! Let's go, Win.
That's all on.
Win.
Wide drop. Get him out. Look for the ball. In other words, no.
Nice ball, Dana.
He's trying to run you guys outside.
Good throw, Dana.
Look inside.
Hey,
Find the ball.
first down
If the
here,
ball is
White.
way over on the other side. You take him and go inside. But if the quarterback's near your side, then you just got to drive him inside and stay on the outside.
Take out Skyler.
But you got to keep coming off the ball. You gotta keep
Go,
coming
line,
off
give
the
him
ball.
time.
That tackle will try to have to really hurry to come outside to get you.
He still got behind you. Let's go, White.
Oh, good there.
Watch the draw. Watch the draw. Go. That a boy. Go, Newman.
Good job, Newman.
That boy 10. That boy 2. Good job, White.
Third and about.
The third down, right?
You don't want to find where you're going to put it.
I don't know.
Third down.
Thank you.
Come on, third down, guys. Let's go. Pick Get up! Let's go! Get over here! Watch out! Razor! Yo, Louie! Louie, go out! Come on, White! Attaboy, White! No. Hey! Here! Good job, Skyler. Keep it going, White. There's a kid who's Go, Davlos. Oh. You better think about this play. Yeah. Why not? That way, bro. Now listen here, we come up, we're gonna go into Griffin. Look, they're going. So they're gonna do it too deep. Okay, they're gonna do too deep. Okay, right now. I'm telling you, get the ball to Hardy right across. Split that middle, Hardy. Okay, so Hardy's gonna go 13-yard dig. You got Hall way over there. Hardy's gonna come from the left. So we're gonna go blue right. Griffin gonna hit you right in the middle of the field. 13 right there. 13-yard in. There it is. Hey, cup one, block your butts off right here. Let's go. This is the play right here. Let's go. Hey, guys, let's go. Got a single back. Let's go, White. So wide. I can't get around him. But let's go, Harvey. David, oh yeah, there's a hand. So wide. Let's go, Harvey. Quick. Oh, wow. There you go. Back. Let's go. What? What? What is that? Hey, go sell this, coach. That's why I asked you how much time. You said 45 seconds. Pretty fast, 45 seconds. Down here. Who got your back? Hey, me, so that was 45 seconds. Hey. Who's in front of me? I was dropping the phone. I thought it was.
That's like when the kid comes home and the parents say, "What time is it?" and they're sleeping in their beds and it's all dark and the kid yells, "It's plenty after 11." They don't hear it too good. They think it's 20 after 11. When I tell Dan wants to know how much time there is, I tell him there's he wasn't going to score that time no matter what he did. He just didn't know it. What's up, Coach?
Do we start putting everybody in second half?
Well, you want to feed them in as you go. Don't try to just put a wholesale because they won't know. Give each kid a chance to play.
But everybody's got to play.
Oh yeah. Just if you put in a reserve, don't put him at the point of attack. Oh boy. Well, this is pretty typical. The the defense, these spring games, the defenses always kind of dominate. And I'm a little surprised. I thought they'd put up a little bit more offense, although the teams are pretty well balanced. The guards, the offensive guards, are not able to keep the tackles out, so they're not getting quite enough time to throw the ball. But the coverage is pretty good too. So it's going pretty good. I'd like to see both of them score about at least one touchdown, and then that field goal would probably make the difference if I were going to script this thing. But it's a real good chance of coming down to 3-0. The white had the better kicker, so I don't know what'll happen here. I think the black has got a little bit more speed and a few more bodies, but they're kind of discouraged. They're kind of on each other's neck, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Find out a lot about your team, that's for sure. Yeah. Okay. But Teote with his Hawaiian stuff there played for us a couple years ago. He's on a full ride to Hawaii. So now he won't run as fast as Dan. So my other volunteer referee here is going to be hard task.
Davison, that's horrible. How much protection are you going to give him? You getting tired? Gotta shake you, thespian. Come on, Jordan! Come on, Jordan. Go defense! Dixie. Dixie over here. Pass! Oh. Good job. Way to go, Jordan. Good job, man. Fired up. Yell at him. I'm a little upset. Works every time. Jordan. Yeah, that was the worst looking bison I've ever seen.
Don't go inside on Blanchard.
Dude, I have to say that.
What do you say about that? I know. He's quick enough. He's quick enough. Wait, do they have green?
They're out a little bit.
Here we go, Hall! Here we go, Hall! Woo! Pass! Ball! Oh, my land! Touchdown. Why did he knock the guy down? Hey, put your finger, son, Wild. The receivers alone. Jeez, Charlie. What are you doing? Good job, Matt.
Wait, that was an awesome pass. You couldn't have catched. I know, but you couldn't have made a better pass than that. There was guys around him. He had to stick.
Go! Nice throw, Rob.
Rob's the quarterback.
Interception's better than that. He's got both hands up. Let's go, baby. Bring her down. We're allowed to intercept, son.
That guy Hall. No, the one with the blonde hair. Number 14. Yeah, the one with the one he picked. No, he's going like this. He's going like that, not going like that. He's going like this. That's what a lot of people do.
Good rush last night. Sprint. Look. Let's go, defense.
No, just having a huddle.
Hey, let's make the play right here, D. Make the play right here. Big play, third down, let's go.
Nice
throw, Rob.
You're not going back or anything.
3, get it up.
Davidson, watch middle.
Pass!
There wasn't much of a contact there, whistle.
Hold. Well, there was no person open. Would you rather have him sacked or picked off? Or picked off? There's nobody open.
We're on exactly on the 40. Yes, we're on the 40.
Yeah, I would.
Heading this way. Dana's on the 40. How much too good, Dad?
We're getting skunked.
That's how long we got to do.
Works. Yeah. You guys, you're coming off the ball. You got to realize sprint, you sprint, you sprint. You make that tackle, just have to really work to keep with you, and that's when you can break it inside. Okay, but you got to get him sprinting up the field. Okay, you're just watching that ball and you're ready for a track meet. That ball twitches, boom, you're up the field. And then you either wrap around it inside, you squeeze, or you got to cut up field off his face. But you don't sit there and wait and read. You see that ball twitch and boom, you're up the field on it. Okay?
You still want me in?
I just don't want to get him.
Oh, you want Manny in?
Who's in last?
Come on, Ivan, you can cover it.
Go, Skyler. Go, baby. Go.
Hey, attaboy!
Go, baby.
Yeah, start fast. And away the plum cake, Skyler.
Stay in his face, Chris. Stay in his face.
Attaboy.
Hey. Shut up! Got it. Go! Newman. Hey! Newman. Go, baby. Dana, look where he is. There you go. Go. Sell the play, Newman. Sell the play, Newman. Go. Go. Oh, Charlie. Charlie. You got to go on the other side of Cabinet. Cutting that guy. Go over there. Go. Let's go. Get in now, guys. Huddle up. Go, go, go. Rip, rip. Let's go, Jing. Point nine. Go. Hey, let's go, let's go, let's go. Hey, come on. In the middle of the field. Let's go, left. What is that? He is wide open. Did you hear left? You're going to go against Kroom, the guy that doesn't play corner. Opponent. Let's go. We have to do it. Dana, that is dumb. Watch him flip the How was that? Hey, by the way, go, Big D! Where'd they go?
Attaboy, Davidson.
Go! Go, baby, huddle. Hey, Tom. Hey, you cheated shot him down. Mark? No, you cheated shot him down. I'm not the linesman. Well, you went like this to him. put your defense out here? Why'd you put your defense out here? Hey, here we go, boys. Blue 80. Let it go. Yeah. Come on, guys. Go, Eric. Come on. Yeah, find out how much time. This will be the longest quarter in history to be able to go. Rayburn, go, you gotta make it up. You gotta get the guy. Come on, Manny! Go defense! Dad, over here. Go D! What do you call? What do you call? Red team! Red team, go! Stay with it. Good job, Harvey! Help on him, Harvey. On left, on left. First, first. You got a problem with your chains here. One ball, one ball. Goes to ball. Boss. Stay with that guy. Hey! Don't make it! Nice pass, Robin! Smart! Faster from here. Ball's on the ground, bouncing, you hit the guy.
15 yards.
Think about it. He let you go on that. Jack. Holy moly, baby. Isn't that 15 yards?
Why, linesman?
Well, I think I came back and it was going down. We lost. Jack. We're outside of it. There you go. Break to the post and move. You're good. Get him, Cat! Hey, Tom, you can put it on the 10 if you want to help. I don't want the pain on the way. Just go put it on the 10. It's easier. Watch out, Coach.
What was the call?
Not knowing offense, not knowing the defense. What down? It's a new rule this year.
That's a new rule. No, that's a new rule.
We got the fourth one, no one in the third.
It's not a legitimate rule, you know?
All the rest of offense is on.
Yep. Ball's on! Blue 80! Here we go! Waggle, waggle! Oh! Good job, Captain! Fourth down, fourth down!
I made it do it later.
Are they punting or going? Here we go. Goes the ball. Go, Monarch. Go, Monarch. Hey!
Launch it, launch it, launch it!
Yeah! Cat! Cat! Go, defense! Here we go now! The guy's offside every play.
We're in trouble now.
No. Hey, Myers, it's a help you check. The game was over about 20 minutes ago. Go defense! We got Strauss, talk to us, sideline. Go defense!
Okay, Manny, go out there. Go on in for David.
Strauss, defense!
Dave.
Oh, wait.
I couldn't see what happened.
Okay, this is the last play of the game. There is 1 second left. And the score is 3-0 White. And I can't tell, but it looks like they're inside the 5. I think what's happening is they're calling for the field goal tee, and Stroop only have their own bag of them. So they pulled it out of his pocket and made him come and get it. And I heard something about a penalty, so I don't know if Stroop got penalized for making him come and get it. We'll find out here. I assume it's good. I couldn't tell. And it looks by Coach Meiss's interview that he did a great job in managing the game, making a few bad calls to make the game close.
I can understand the big guys wanting chicken.
You can tell by Coach Stroop his great sportsmanship. He accepts it, accepts the tie. So it looks like everybody eats chicken. Or everybody eats beans. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what they wear under their little short shorts under their mentirosa. That would suck. No, actually, it would. I asked Simon that once, and
There is no one excused from the final. Anybody comes up other than short of your parents both dying in an automobile accident an hour before class, and I don't hear about it, you're going to be a deep cocky. Like sit out the first 4 or 5 games. It takes we're all required to be there. We have certain things that we do. Hey, coaches, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this?
What time's the final on Wednesday, Tom? What time's that? Starts at 10?
Okay, if you would, if you don't mind, just bow your head. I want to give thanks back because my big concern is that we have a game in which no one is injured and that we can build and go forward, and I'm thankful for that. Father God, I thank you again for this team and for the opportunity to coach them. I thank you that you protected us today. You gave us a good competition. I thank you for the hearts that are right before you, that just want to find out how good they can be and honor you in their efforts. Thank you for helping us to just have a goal that we can move together and to try to succeed at. Be with us throughout this afternoon and help these guys prepare for their finals and make sure that they're all eligible. Thank you for these things in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, 5 pride checks.
Oh, watch this shit, guys.
Robbie.
People.
You guys played really well, and
Shut up. I'm serious. Shut up, dude. It's going to take every individual on this football field to win the CIF, and I want to get there. If we don't, I'll be really pissed off. I hear, baby. Do that.
Hey, I tried to do everything.
Hey, where's the help us out with the jerseys? Pick them up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Play.
Play.
Hey, coach.
Hey, Lars, no.